Good afternoon. My name is Peter Hill, CGL representative for North and Central Lancs. We're here today with my colleague Christine. Christine, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks, Peter. I'm a newly appointed server user rep for CCGL, the same as what Peter is. And I would like to thank Dr. Stephen Smith for agreeing to take part in this session with me and Peter. And I would like Dr. Smith just to introduce himself to everyone.
Sure, yeah, so Steve Smith, I'm a GP specialist in substance misuse, and I'm one of the prescribers based at Preston, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
That's great, thank you. I'd like to kick off the session, if I may. First of all, we would just like to know why you chose to become a GP with special interests. If you could inform us about that.
Sure, yeah, I've had a very varied career, actually. I've worked as a surgeon and worked abroad as a missionary doctor in Pakistan, done lots of different things. I went into general practice in 1998, and I just found myself at a practice in Bradford, actually, where we were looking after a lot of people who were on scripts. Actually, I was going to say methadone scripts. In those days, it was mostly dihydrocodeine, actually. And in those days, then buprenorphine got added. But yeah, I just found that that was work that I really enjoyed. And over the years, I got more and more experience in substance misuse, and in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, it's become just about the only thing that I'm doing, really.
Oh, it was great. Okay. It was great to know you're out there doing that. So could you sort of describe what your average week looks like for you currently?
Sure. Well, I work half-time for CGL, so it's 2.5 days a week. And that, I mean, obviously now since COVID, some of that actually is at home. To be honest, I spend most of my time coming into the base at St Wilfrid's in Preston. So and now it's mostly doing telephone consultations. Occasionally we're seeing people face to face, but not very much. So I do that half time. I run a charity, it's called the Keys Project, which I work with teams in various parts of the country that are based in churches. And through this charity, we also support people with drug and alcohol issues to help them to sort of find recovery support in the community, and that can include detox support as well. So that takes most of the week as well.
Right.
So you have got a very involved role, very diverse role, but what we were really wanting to know is if you feel in yourself that you're making a difference to your current role.
Yeah, it's a tough area, isn't it? Substance misuse. There are lots of people who are on a very difficult journey into recovery, but I've been very grateful to see lives changed, both through CGL. I have to say, I think I see more results through the charity work, and that's probably because we're able to coordinate more support. Because as we all know, community support in recovery is vital. It's a really crucial aspect of recovery support, much more important than medication. So yeah, I do see people finding freedom, and it's not as often as we would like, but it is very gratifying when it happens.
Now, you just touched on the COVID situation, Stephen, and it must be incredibly difficult. Would you say that currently, with the patient-doctor appointments, are you happy with that? Or telephone calls the future and Zoom calls, or how is it working for you? Which is you finding the best?
It is working better than I would have thought. I certainly miss the face-to-face contact. I mean, I feel I do like connecting with people, and I feel like if I'm in the same room as somebody, you can have a rapport that can really be quite meaningful that you simply can't have on the telephone.
Sure.
I think a video conference like we're having now is a good compromise.
Yeah.
And since we've been working since COVID, there's only been one patient that I've worked with on a Zoom call, or it was a Skype call, and I wish we could do more of that. I think if we could do more calls, because plenty of service users do have smartphones, so I think that would be one thing that would be beneficial both to us as clinicians and also to our clients, is if we could really work towards at least video calls in the short term, and hopefully before too long we'll be able to have face-to-faces as well.
Sure.
I know you've touched on your volunteering and charity challenges that you have at the moment, but is there any one particular challenge that you face with that sticks out more to you?
Challenges. Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the biggest challenge at the moment is connecting. Connection is really important. If I'm going to help somebody to feel inspired to really, make progress with their treatment plan, then we need to be connected, don't we? They need to know who I am. I need to know who they are. And that connection and that lack of connection because of social distancing is definitely, I'd say that's the greatest challenge that we all face probably.
And you maybe have touched on this already, but the most rewarding aspect of your role, and I think you kind of answered that already really, but if you just reiterate that, seeing somebody, attend sessions, appointments and things. So the most rewarding aspect, what would you say it is?
Actually, I think I used the word finding freedom, didn't I? When somebody really finds freedom from substance misuse. But actually, it is also very rewarding, really, in the early stages too, when people are in a real mess, and and that happens on a regular basis, on a daily basis. We have people who are in crisis mode, they're using heavily. And just to help them to suddenly achieve a degree of stability by getting onto a script, that's obviously very rewarding as well. And we know it's life-saving. I've just heard of somebody who's sadly died. I don't know the person involved, but just know of a report, somebody who failed to get onto a script, and it just goes to show that getting onto a script is a life-saving event. So we do really want to do that, and of course it's encouraging when we can see and can hear the gratitude that people have when they can not have to use again.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
totally agree with that.
I know within today's current climate, like we've touched on with COVID-19, we're more or less seeing daily reports on the news and briefings about what support is out there for the NHS and extra support they're getting from the government. But is there any additional support that you are currently getting in today's climate from as a CGL or from other partner agencies? Anything extra?
Well, I have to speak for myself, and I'm not aware of extra support that comes to mind. You'd probably have to ask the managers and the clinical leads that. But I'm not aware of any massive extra support that affects us.
Well, that's also interesting. Maybe it's something that we could, discuss further down the line. Now, you and I both know. I mean, I've been in this situation personally. How can we reduce stigma towards clients, to get them to come and get involved in things without feeling ostracized, if you know what I mean.
Are you meaning the stigma that clients themselves feel, or that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully meetings like this that are going to be on the Facebook page will hopefully show people that we're human and approachable. We're not going to bite anybody's heads off. I'm in this to help, and obviously it's a job, but it is also just because for myself, I do want to help people. So hopefully people who are feeling anxious about making that step into treatment will realize that. I think the vast majority of my colleagues are very approachable, are people who do genuinely want to help, and if we can help the clients to realize that might help. Maybe there is some stigma within the community towards people that are homeless and drug using. I think that that's a big challenge. One thing that I'm aware of, I teach sometimes about addiction, and what I like to really point out is that people are often caught up in addiction because they have experienced real emotional pain, and that's what really often feeds addiction. And I think one thing that we want to help society have is compassion for people who are in a desperate state through addiction. A lot of people have this idea that it's their silly fault, they shouldn't have been messing around with those stupid drugs or whatever, and there could be a lot of really uncaring attitudes towards people in addiction. But really, we need to help society at large to have a more compassionate attitude. That's for sure.
That's a great answer. Great answer.
Yeah, we're well aware that there's not a one-fix solution for a client with an addiction to a certain drug. One treatment would work for one client where it might not be suitable for another client. And it's just sort of having the flexibility and working more with the client than going down a treatment pathway that might not be suitable for that client. And for us as caregivers to have that flexibility within ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. We need to be very flexible and have a treatment plan that suits the individual client. My feeling is that people will buy into a plan if they have had a say in what we do. So I like to help people to agree with me as to a way forward, particularly when we're making changes. And in the early stages, when somebody's coming to me for a start, the main plan is simply to get onto a script, and that's dealing with the urgent need. The urgent need initially is to help somebody to stop having to use street drugs. But once you've got somebody stable in treatment, then absolutely we need to look at being flexible and working with somebody to help them to engage with their community, engage with recovery support, with family support, do what we can to help them get back into work, address their housing needs. Yeah, definitely need to be flexible. I think it's always important. I think a lot of doctors end up just simply being focused on the script, and that's almost the only issue that we're tempted to consider. Yeah. When of course there is a whole range of things. We need to be looking at, I guess you're familiar with the term recovery capital. We need to be looking at all the factors that are going to help somebody get themselves into a better place. But ultimately, if at all possible, we want to help people address the issue that may be the fundamental reason for why they're taking drugs in the first place. Yeah. So maybe it may be, dealing with, for example, childhood trauma or grief or loss or relationship breakdown, whatever it is. Unless we actually address the underlying reason for somebody being addicted, we may not actually be helping them very well in the long term.
That's very concise answer that. I mean, that's brilliant, and we'd like to work alongside you guys with that. And as you know, CGL as an organisation, we try our best to work closely with our clients. Do you think, is there anything that in which way we could improve communication with them in order to help you guys as well? Could we communicate more feedback, or, you know, it's just an option and a suggestion, really?
So was the question how service users could be communicating with CGL? Was that what you meant?
Well, the service users that we come across, you know, obviously directing them to your services, which is what we aim to do. But is there a better way that perhaps we could fulfil that?
Yeah, well, I think use any and every means of communication possible. I wasn't particularly aware, for example, that there was social media, and yeah, let's make more use of social media. I guess we can be encouraging people who are not familiar with technology to access social, to be accessing, you know, recovery pages, forums. And of course, there's a lot of recovery support going online now. Out of the difficulties from COVID, we've actually got some things that have been benefits, and hopefully we can just help people to plug into those. But yeah, and we can certainly improve communication in all respects, I'm sure. So that's something definitely to work at.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Dr. Smith, I'd just like to ask if you've got any questions that you'd like to put to myself or Peter, as has been service user rep.
Yeah, I mean, how are you finding it? Do you feel that the service users are getting the communication from CGL that they deserve, that they should be having?
Okay, I can sort of start with this. I mean, it's very new to both myself and Christine, but there are people, and I think because of COVID, this is a real sticking point here. It's the fly in the ointment, so to speak, is that there's no group meetings, very little that's going on currently. And it's difficult. Some people, they may have smartphones, but they've not got data to, and if they have got data, it eats it up in no time. And
of course,
it's very difficult, and they're less likely to engage. And as you mentioned earlier, as we were talking through the course of this, face-to-face is absolutely, it's the best. It's the best way. And I think we're really struggling at the moment to achieve what we really want. But it's got to be the way forward. It's got to be the way forward. I know a couple of people, like I say, it's very new to me. It's also a volunteer for Red Rose Recovery. And they're having equally difficulties. Buildings are closed. You can't even go in a cafe and sit down and have a coffee anymore. It's so hard. And the weather's so inclement outside. People aren't going to turn up for a coffee and sit on a wet wall or a wet bench. And so I'm finding it a little bit difficult, to be perfectly honest with you, but all we can do is Zoom and do our best, you know, and try and call people, try and communicate. Communication, I think, is the key, but as you said earlier, face-to-face is the best.
Sure.
Really.
I mean, I know obviously at the moment we're in full-blown lockdown, but when we're out of that, I do know that I go to church myself, and so churches are able to function. So I would have thought on that basis, it would be possible to have recovery meetings, 12-step meetings, in buildings that are suitably large to allow for social distancing. I mean, I guess, you know, even though things are difficult, there must be plenty of buildings in our localities that people could use that would be allowable in the same way as religious meetings are allowed.
That's the first statement. That, not being very religious myself, I'm a good Catholic boy, believe it or not, but I don't go to church as often as I should, just for confession every 6 months.
Right. But I'm not saying people need to go to church. What I'm saying is that the fact is that churches are allowed to meet. So in the same way, 12-step groups should be able to meet
Sure. Yeah.
but with with appropriate distancing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I think with the current government guidelines on meeting with groups stands at present is that anybody that can facilitate for mental health issues, which is intertwined with the substance misuse. I think the limit is for 15 people currently, but to have those 15 people, it has to be COVID safe, it has to have the social distancing in place, and to find a facility currently that could take on those guidelines, we find difficult at the moment for any group meeting.
Sure. Yeah, it is a challenge.
Yeah.
It is. It is.
It is. Well, you've been absolutely spectacular and a privilege to talk to you this afternoon. You've talked a lot of sense. I've certainly learned something. And I personally would like to thank you for your time. I hope we get to speak to you again in the near future. And just stay well, take care, and keep up the good work. It's amazing. I'm sure Christine would echo that, and I'm sure she's got something to add.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and I'll be very happy to speak again if you need me.
That's very kind of you.